For 25 years, David Whitmore woke every morning next to the woman he believed he knew better than anyone in the world. He kissed her forehead, brewed her favorite cinnamon coffee, and left for work with a promise to return home early. His love for Marianne was unwavering, even as the decades passed and their youthful spark dulled into routine. They had built everything together: a home on Sycamore Lane, 2 children, a successful family-owned accounting firm. They had survived cancer scares, financial struggles, and inevitable grief of aging parents. David believed their shared history had forged an unbreakable bond. But history, he would learn, could be rewritten. It started with an old photograph. David was clearing out the attic, sorting boxes to make room for their future grandchildren's things, when he found it, an envelope of old Polaroids tucked inside one of Marianne's college journals. Most of the photos were innocent: beach trips, study sessions, youthful laughter. Then one fell out. A picture of Marianne, smiling in bed, her bare shoulder clearly visible. But it wasn't David who had taken it. The date on the back read April 16th, 2001, a year after their youngest son was born. David blinked, confused. He hadn't been on any trip that spring, and he certainly hadn't taken that photo. Curiosity turned to unease to suspicion. He started looking deeper: old phone bills, bank statements, late-night emails. He accessed her cloud storage when she forgot to log out one evening. The evidence was damning, overwhelming. There had been someone else. Not just once. Not just a fling. The affair had started before their 20th anniversary and had continued, in secret, for 25 years. A man named Robert Ellison, a colleague she met during a corporate merger in '99. He lived 2 states away, had a wife of his own, and a taste for secrecy. David unearthed emails, photos, even anniversary notes. They had pet names. They had plans. Marianne had loved someone else while lying beside David for more than half their marriage. He confronted her one rainy Tuesday evening while the stew simmered and the news played in the background like static. She froze when he laid the photo on the table. Her breath hitched, her hands trembling as she realized he knew. "I was going to tell you," she whispered, though even she didn't sound convinced by her own words. "When?" David asked, his voice hollow. "After 30 years? After I died?" "I didn't mean for it to last," she said, crying now. "At first it was just loneliness. You were so busy. The kids needed everything. I got used to the escape." He sat down slowly, the weight of 2.5 decades collapsing onto his chest. "Do they even know?" Marianne shook her head. "They think he's just a friend. They don't know anything." "And Robert?" "He passed away last year. Heart attack." David stared at her then. This woman he'd held through sickness and sorrow, whose laugh he once thought could light a room, and saw a stranger. In the months that followed, David didn't yell. He didn't leave. Their children were grown, and the scandal would only bring chaos. But something in him fractured beyond repair. He moved into the guest room. The house became silent. Meals were taken in solitude. Conversations became transactional. Marianne tried to explain, to beg, to apologize. But David had given her his entire life, and she had taken it, piece by piece, without remorse for 25 years. By the time he found out, it was too late. Too late to start over. Too late to undo the love he had given her. Too late to go back to the man he was before the betrayal. He stayed, out of duty, out of inertia, but he was never really there again. And sometimes, late at night, Marianne would sit alone in the dark kitchen, stare at the family photos on the wall, and wonder if love could ever forgive what time could not forget. But the silence always answered her. David began spending more time away from home. He took up hobbies he'd long neglected: woodworking in the shed, volunteering at the local library, attending veterans' breakfasts even though he never served. Anything to avoid the suffocating stillness of the house they once filled with laughter. Marianne noticed. He stopped asking how her day was, stopped fixing the leaky faucets, or tucking in the back porch chair cushions the way she liked. On their 30th anniversary, he left a card on the kitchen counter and signed blank. She cried that night, quietly, in their shared bathroom, the echo of her sobs swallowed by the walls she had helped build, and ultimately helped break. One afternoon, their eldest daughter, Rachel, came over with her newborn, Ellie. David held his granddaughter in his arms and smiled, truly smiled, for the first time in months. Marianne stood behind them, watching with aching nostalgia. She remembered when David had held Rachel the same way. Strong, gentle, completely present. Later that day, Rachel sat with her mother while Ellie napped, her voice lowered, eyes wary. "Is Dad okay?" Marianne hesitated. "He's just tired." Rachel studied her. "It's more than that. He barely looks at you." Marianne nodded slowly, her heart sinking. "He knows." Rachel didn't ask what he knew. Her expression shifted to something cold and distant. "You did something, didn't you?" "I didn't plan for it to happen," Marianne whispered. "I was stupid. I was selfish. And I've lost him." Rachel said nothing more. She gathered her baby and left with quiet, "Tell him I said goodbye." That night, David found Marianne in the living room, staring at an old photo album. "Do you remember this trip?" she asked, pointing to a picture of them in Italy 20 years ago. He had his arm around her. She was laughing. "I remember," he said quietly. "We were happy." David looked at the photo. "I thought we were." She reached for his hand. He pulled away. "Please, David, I know I can't fix it. I know I destroyed everything. But I swear, not a day has gone by that I haven't." "Stop," he interrupted. "Just stop." Her eyes welled with tears, but she nodded. "I stayed," he said, "because of the life we built, because of the kids, because walking away now, it wouldn't give me back the years you stole." "I know," she whispered, "but don't think that staying means forgiveness." She flinched. "You buried a knife in my back every year and smiled like nothing was wrong," he continued. "You loved someone else and let me live in a lie. And now that he's gone, now that you feel alone, you want me to be your home again." "I don't expect that," she said. "Good," he said, walking out of the room. Years passed. They remained married, at least on paper. Attended family functions side by side. Smiled for photos. Played grandparents. But their hearts never touched again. At David's retirement party, he gave a speech. Thanked his staff, his children, his friends. He didn't mention Marianne. That night, Marianne sat alone in the bedroom, holding an old love letter from Robert she had never dared to throw away. For a moment, she considered burning it, but didn't. She tucked it back in her drawer, knowing that her past was all she truly had now. When David passed away 10 years later, peacefully in his sleep, the house was full of visitors. Children, grandchildren, neighbors. Marianne stood beside his casket, silent. She didn't cry, because her grief wasn't fresh. She had started mourning the man she once loved the moment he discovered the truth, the moment he looked at her not with love, but with betrayal buried beneath quiet eyes. And that kind of death, the slow and hollow kind, had already taken everything but guilt. And guilt, Marianne knew, never died after the funeral. The house was quieter than it had ever been. The kids returned to their lives. The flowers wilted. The condolence cards stopped arriving. Marianne wandered the empty halls like a ghost tethered to memory. She often paused in front of the old photo wall. Birthdays, vacations, graduations, all moments David had cherished while she'd been living a double life. She thought of writing him a letter, something to say what she never could while he was alive. But what was left to say? That she regretted it? That she wished she'd chosen differently? Truth was, she had chosen. Again and again. And now, there was no one left to lie to. One evening, she pulled out an old box tucked in the attic, the same one that had unraveled it all. Inside were the photos, letters, mementos of her affair. She held one of Robert's letters in trembling hands. "You once told me he wouldn't understand you the way I do. But, Marianne, one day he will find out. And when he does, I hope you choose peace, even if it means being alone." She finally did. With quiet hands, she fed the letters, the photos, the memories, everything, into the fireplace. Flames flickered. Ash curled. Years dissolved into smoke. In the final years of her life, Marianne lived simply. She donated David's books to the library he loved. set up a scholarship in his name, volunteered at the local food pantry. No one asked about her past. No one knew the full story. To them, she was just a lonely widow giving back. But at night, she spoke to him, in whispers. "I'm sorry I broke us," she would murmur to the darkness. "I wish you could have loved me one last time. I wish I had deserved it." And the silence, as always, answered with truth. Some betrayals can be forgiven, but some only leave ashes. And that was how it ended. Not with justice, not with closure, not even with reconciliation. Just a woman, alone with memory, and a man who had once given everything, only to discover F.A.